Hi everyone, welcome to the Wind Up. Hi everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to be having a look at the Vostok Amphibia. A little bit of a deep dive into the watch itself, where the design for that watch came from and why it is a little bit different to your standard dive watch. From there, we're going to be doing a modification of a 120849 for a friend of mine. And with that, let's dive on in. Vostok was founded in 1942 during the war. It was based in Kristopol, Russia, where it exclusively made equipment for the war effort till the end of 1945, where it began producing watches. The brand, however, did not start using the Vostok name till 1965, where it likely took this after the Vostok space program. This same year, Vostok was named the official supplier of watches to the Ministry of Defense of the Soviet Union, with their first watch being the Komandirsky or Commander's Watch. In 1967, Vostok tasked chief designers Mikhail Novikov and Vera Belova with designing a diving watch that could compete with Western counterparts. According to Mikhail, the name came from a contest run at the factory by the employees, and they came up with the Amphibia. Amphibia is the Russian term for dive watch and comes from amphibians which operate both on land and sea. Due to the fact that many foreign designs were patented, the Russian team had to get creative around how they were going to design a watch that was robust and could withstand 200 meters of water resistance. With the amphibian's lucite crystal being 3 millimeters, this is up to 50% thicker than standard watch crystals. The crystal, when under pressure, begins to compress and deform, effectively sealing the watch even better the deeper it goes. Further to this, the amphibian's rubber gasket on the caseback is very wide, allowing it to compress and decompress much easier and smoother, as it can compress by 20 to 30%, which if a gasket decompresses too slow compared to the caseback, it weakens the seal. If this distortion was applied to a standard O-ring, it would permanently compress and be unable to hold water tightness. And onto the watch. So today we're actually going to be modding this Vostok Amphibia for a friend of mine, and we're going to be changing a few parts on it. We'll be changing out the hands, we'll be changing out the bezel, and we'll put a new strap on it as well. We'll put a few NATO straps on this one. The Vostoks are a lot of fun to modify. The parts are quite easy to use, and they're quite often interchangeable with some of the Seiko SKX parts as well. So the bezels, for example, you can just get an SKX bezel and put it straight in if you wanted to. So this Amphibia, it's actually going to be the third Amphibia that I will mod. This is the 120849 model. Like many of the other amphibias, it actually has the 2416 movement, and that gives the 31-hour power reserve. So if we're just looking at the dimensions of the watch, 18 mil lug width. The width of the watch itself, the diameter is 41 millimeters. Height with the lugs is around 48 millimeters, and the case thickness we're looking at around about 12 millimeters. So just to start things off, I did take the watch strap off. It's very easy, obviously, to remove the watch strap, just using a little Bourgeon tool, which is always nice and handy to have. But with that, and one thing I just wanted to point out is that on the rubber strap that came with the watch, I was quite surprised with how soft the rubber was. I was actually very impressed with this rubber strap. Normally when I get the Vostoks in, it comes on their well-known metal straps, which can be a little bit noisy at times and a little bit rough. But this rubber strap, again, I haven't had one come in before for myself on the rubber strap, and I was very impressed with how soft the rubber was as well. So that'll be a nice little rubber strap to keep with the watch. So first things first, what we're going to do is we're going to remove the case back of the watch. So always very easy to sort of do this. What you'll notice on these is that they are a little bit different to a lot of the standard watches that you might see. You'll see that there's a bit of a ring around the outside that's actually holding down the case back, as opposed to being just a standard screw down case back. And that's to do with part of the waterproofing of the watch itself. So what I'll do is I'll just take this off the back here, and once I've done that, I'll explain to you how the waterproofing on this particular watch works. So just screw that off the back, and just move that around, and that should just pop right off. For this, and always to find the easiest way to do this, is that you will notice just on here there's a little lip. You can just put your little tool underneath there and pop that up, and the movement would, the backing of the movement would just sort of come off there easily. And so, as I mentioned, the waterproofing on this watch is quite interesting. So you can see the 2416 movement there ticking away, and what you'll notice is that the rubber gasket on the back here is quite thick, and it's actually thicker than you would normally see in most watches. And the reason is, and that's to do with the case design of the Vostok. What we actually see with this is that the case actually compresses as it gets deeper. Instead of being a fully sealed enclosure, it compresses as the pressure from the water increases, and it actually pushes down harder on this rubber seal. And that actually displaces and moves about 30% as that case pushes down. Now, if that happened on a normal rubber seal, you would see that the movement of that would actually keep it compressed, and it wouldn't actually bounce back when you actually start to surface and the pressure starts to release, and that would obviously decrease the waterproofing of this whole movement. So what you actually find is that this rubber seal is quite thick. Again, as the pressure increases, that seal does take that increased pressure and actually increases the water resistance of this watch the deeper it goes. So it actually has a very unique water resistance system set up. So what we're going to do now is we're going to remove the movement from this watch, and the first step for doing that is we'll want to remove the crown and the stem. So we'll just start to loosen the crown and the stem here. And again, another unique thing about this watch, which you'll notice, is how this crown actually moves on this watch. And again, that's quite an interesting design part of this watch, in that this is done so that the stem actually doesn't get damaged as you're trying to move things about, set the time and all the rest of it. So another bit of a unique design of this watch. So what we do now is you'll notice that there is a little indentation there, a little button. And when you actually press down on that button, what happens is that it allows the stem to release. So what we'll do now is we'll just sort of press down on that. And as we press down on that, the stem and the crown should come out. So now that we've moved that, we can actually remove the whole movement from the watch. And so you should just find a little place to get a bit of a purchase, and then that will just pop out. What we'll do is we'll just place that just over here. So nothing else we need to do with the case at the moment. The little bit of markings that you can sort of see there, that's only because the protective sticker is still on the front. It's not dirty or scratched or anything like that. I just haven't removed the protective film from the front yet. So when we have a look at the movement and what we're going to be taking apart here, it is quite simple to do this, but it can also be a little bit daunting as well. And I appreciate that. I know first time I did it, it was a little bit daunting, but you want to make sure you get it right, obviously. So a few different tricks and a few different tools to use around this to keep it nice and simple. So what I have here is it's a little Bergeon dial cover, and what that does is it actually protects the dial as you're removing the hands. And so what happens is it's very easy just to slide that underneath the hands there, and then as you decide to move the hands and remove them, it actually won't damage the dial, and that's nicely protected. So when you're removing the hands on the watch, there are quite a few different ways that you can do that, a few different tools that you can do that. Some people like using the tweezers that actually sort of push down and remove the whole thing at once. I personally like using the two separate hand remover tools. Again, these are, you know, these ones are quite cheap. You can buy them on sort of eBay or Alibaba or whatever it might be. They're quite cheap and easy to get a hold of. But I find having the dexterity of having the two separate ones to remove the hands much easier. So all you do here now is place this underneath the bottom hand, get a purchase and slide up, and that will pop the hands off for you there. What I'll do is I'll just grab the tweezers just to get those out of the way. And we can of course remove that now. So now that that's done, we have the movement and we are all set to put the new hands back on. Now, one thing you would have noticed was I didn't set the time when I was actually removing those hands. So how do you put the hands back the way they were, or how do you put them in a way so that you know that they are going to be correct? What you'll do is you'll normally actually place the stem and the crown back in, and then you'll wind it around to the midnight position, just when that date window ticks over. Once that's actually ticked over, you know that the hour hand should be at the 12 o'clock position, and that's where we'll set our first hand down. So what I'll do now is I'll flip it over, place this back in, and then I will set the time to midnight. Push that little button just to get it back in. And then away we go. Cool. And so that's set to midnight now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the hands that we'll be using for this, and I'll lay them out, and then we can actually start to put them down and put them on the piece. Okay, now that I have removed the hands from their little plastic packets that they didn't want to get out of, we're going to be putting the new hands onto the watch. So what we're going to go with today is these aviation style hands. You can see over here, and the first one obviously we're going to put on is the hour hand. So what we do is we just place it on there and we move it around to that 12 o'clock position because we know that we just set the clock for midnight. This is now where I bring in these little tools that allows me to push down on the hands to set them. Again, you can use, there's like a metal pusher that you can get, and it's a sort of a one piece where you're able to sort of just push down and put all the hands on that way. Again, I prefer to have the individual hand set pieces. I feel like I have a little bit more control when I do that. But what you do now is you just place this over the hand. Make sure that we have it in place. And we set that in there. So now that our hand should be on, and if we pull it out, we should be able to set the time. As you can see, that sets just like that. So what we're going to do to put the next hand on, we'll actually slide this around to the 6 o'clock position, and then we'll be placing on the next hand. Oops. Always fun holding these little hands. So again, just like the hour hand, with the minute hand, we set that to 12 o'clock. Oops. Be nice if I could get that on. We set that to 12. And then I'll be grabbing a slightly smaller handset piece. And then pushing down. Let me just double check that that's set. And that should now be set to go. Yep. There we go. Perfect. And then we're putting on the second hand. So again, just moving those around to get them out of the way. And we're placing on this black lollipop style hand. And that should be in there now, running away. So now that that's done, next thing that we'll be doing is we'll actually just pop out this crown and we're going to place the movement back into the case. Let's just pop this around. Again, we're just going to be pushing down onto this little button here to move out the stem. And there we go. Get this out of the way. We can place this back in nice and easily. So one thing I probably will do as well is, before I do place that in, just give it a bit of a clean. Up. I like to just double check that we are all aligned on this side. I think we're looking pretty good. So now that that's all done, I will just be pushing the little button and then sliding the stem and the crown back in. Push that in. Away you go. Before we put the case back on, we'll just put the gasket back in. Make sure that sits down nice and even. Tuck that in there. Perfect. Trace the top. Where we go. It's in there snug. And then we'll just place on the back ring. And then we're done. So that's how we actually change the hands, remove the movement, and have that all covered off. So the next step that I will be doing is I'm actually going to be removing this bezel, and I'll be placing a new bezel and new bezel insert on as well. What we'll be doing now is we're just using a tool like this to actually get underneath that coin bezel edge there, and then give it a twist and pop the current bezel right off. I normally like to use just a piece of material to cover the tool, just because I don't want to scratch the case or anything like that, or scratch the bezel, obviously, if we're going to be using it again down the track for something. So I'll just usually cover up the little tool just like this. I usually sort of push underneath and then just give it a twist. And there you have the bezel off. So this is easy for us to just put aside now, and obviously my friend can have this as a backup, and he can change it over if he wants to down the track, but that will just be a little backup now. To apply the new bezel, all we have to do with this is actually just place it over and then push down, and it should just be done that simply. And that's it. The new bezel is on, so nice smooth action, and we should be set to go. And so that is the completed modification. So if you want to modify any other amphibias, any other Vostoks, the process is very, very similar that I took you through just now. If you do have any questions, please comment below, and I'd be happy to chat through those with you. But for now, let's flip the camera and finish up.